Welcome to Failing for You, where I'll fail so you don't have to, or even better yet, so you can too. Hey everybody, it's Jordan Yates here. Welcome back to another episode of Failing for You. Guys, today is extra special because we have our very first guest. This is Javi. Javi, say hi.
Hey guys, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so he's our first real life guest. I know my dogs are sometimes in the room, but we would say that he might be slightly cooler than them because he can talk back. So we're excited to have him today. And what we're most excited about is talking about how to build your brand. Now, Javi has recently started becoming a bit more active on LinkedIn. He's also been interested in trying to start possibly a YouTube channel, but something that Javi has been struggling with, correct me if I'm wrong, is sort of where he wants his brand to be and what he wants it to look like. He has a lot of ideas, but he's currently in the process of trying to zone those in and make something out of it to where he feels like what he's putting in is showing on the output. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through some questions with him. So it'll be kind of similar to if one of you that are listening are struggling to focus your brand and you're wanting to define that for yourself, this will be a great thing to listen along to. So Javi, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started, a quick intro, then we'll go through our regular segment. So just kind of what you do now, where you work, and where you're at, like geographically.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for letting me have this introduction here. So I'm Javi Melecio. I used to work in aerospace for about 3 years, and now I work in electronics manufacturing, doing a lot of applications engineering and in-house engineering. I recently decided that it would be nice to start the personal brand, to kind of create, that name for myself on social media, whether it be LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, and to just start getting out there. So that's, when I started posting and seeing what was of interest. And Jordan, when I saw your content, I realized this is somebody who's doing something that is of interest to me, engineering, manufacturing, posting out there, getting engagement. And so that's why I was very interested in talking with you and seeing what can I do to go from where I am now to where I want to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for some background context, Javi and I do know each other from LinkedIn. We've messaged a few times prior, and then yesterday we had our first formal introduction over the phone where we were talking about sort of what he's wanting to accomplish. And I was like, hold on, before we have another conversation, we need to podcast this because this will be helpful to other people. So before getting into the actual podcast itself, we're introducing our new segment that we started last week, and we'll do it again today, which is Failure of the Week. All right, so this is where I just do a quick little anecdote of my failure this week and something I learned from it. Then we get to the meat of the episode. So, I didn't fail at anything this week. I'm just kidding. No, I constantly fail. It's honestly hard to choose from what I want to talk about because I'm like, oh goodness, should I say what I did wrong today or yesterday? There's so many things I'm constantly messing up. Where do I begin? But I would say my failure that stuck out to me this week was probably Monday night. Before going back to work after having about a week off, I just could not fall asleep because I was just spiraling. I was like, oh my God, I forgot how to do my job. I forgot how to do life. What is the schedule? I just spent the week before sitting on my couch. And then I started having more of a spiral thinking, oh God, I'm not doing enough. Do I hug my dogs enough? Do my dogs know how much I love them? Have I told them enough today? Because I'm very affectionate towards my dogs. So of course I tell them I love them 1,000 times a day, but they're sleeping in their cage and I'm like, what if they think I don't love them? And then I just was spiraling all these ridiculous things that were just randomized anxiety manifesting themselves. And my failure was letting it get to me. It took me hours to fall asleep, so I decided to step back from it, and I told myself in my head, if I had a friend that was going through this, what would I tell them? I tell them to chill out, stop, what are you doing? Sure, your fears have some sort of, validation, but it's ridiculous and you don't need to solve it tonight. So I went and I made myself 2 toaster waffles. I sat on the couch for 45 minutes and then I went to bed and it was fine and everything's fine. So moral of the story is when you start spiraling, just try to talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend and actually take your own advice. And if that doesn't work, eat some toaster waffles, okay? All right, that was failure of the week. Now we're going to transition into the actual interview style sort of thing that we're doing today with Javi. So, Javi, you told us about where your background is a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit more about what you actually do on a daily basis as your job? Remind us of your current job again.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm an applications engineer at Bead Electronics in Milford. And so Bead produces custom mechanical pins for things like PCBs and connectors. Custom, quick, cost-effective is what they do, and it's really cool. And so what I do is help with inbound sales leads, understanding the technical application and trying to resolve that for the customer to get their best solution. I also help out with in-house engineering, so there are continuous improvement projects like inspection equipment or understanding speed of processes and things of that nature. I help out with that too.
Nice. So when you were in college, did you ever think that this is what you would be doing?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So I came into college undeclared, not knowing what
Wow.
my future was going to be.
Oh,
Crazy,
man.
right?
Yeah.
I had some good friends. I think they say that you are the 5 closest people to you, and
It's
so
horrifying. I'm just kidding.
and they all happened to be engineers, and they convinced me, along with like the role models that I just already had of people, throughout history, dead or alive, that were inventors or engineers or businessmen, that it was the way to go to create stuff. So after my freshman year undeclared, I decided to go into engineering, and it's been history ever since.
And you did mechanical as well, right? Is that what you
Absolutely.
said?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So ME Club.
Yeah, for
Wonderful.
Sure.
Okay, so getting into the specifics of personal brand, we're going to try to break this down by more specific questions, but although I have a structure like I told you previously, we're going to let this be organic. We're going to let it kind of just build and follow your it's going to be like a brainstorming session for Javi, but something I think will be very applicable to you guys as well. So the first question we're going to ask is, Javi, what are you passionate about?
Yeah, so I find myself being passionate about manufacturing. And so the reason why I think it's really interesting or amazing, honestly, is the fact that you're able to hold a real life, sample or product in your hands. And so I think that's kind of, by going into my professional career as mechanical engineering and the experience that I've gotten, it's made me realize that creating things is really cool. And again, back to you and your profile in terms of like, working with the robots or welding or even soldering, like the fact that you're doing things in real life, that's something that when I see that, I'm like, that's something that I could try to aspire to with my content, and show other people that anyone can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yesterday I asked Javi, like, hey, have you seen that show, How It's Made? Because I remember watching that growing up. I don't know if it's still on. I don't keep up with regular TV as much these days. But he was like, yeah, that's absolutely something that I find to be inspiring. And I think something cool, too, is with our generation, we do have this need for instant gratification. And so getting to see the input and then creating the output, which really is what manufacturing is, like we have an idea and then we make it real. It's such a cool thing to be a part of that. And another thing, Javi, I think your headphones, oh, there you go. Okay. So another thing that we're going to ask next, and I'm going to kind of combine this as an answer to a question Javi sent me this morning, or more of a statement, really. So Javi was telling me that he likes what I do on LinkedIn. And if you guys aren't familiar with me on LinkedIn, then freaking get familiar with me. No, I'm just kidding.
Check it out.
Yeah, so what I do for myself as Jordan Yates, I like to post things I'm interested in at the time. Luckily, a lot of my interests are my nerdy mechanical engineering, electrical engineering related things like soldering, welding. I like to do the physical application portion of engineering. That's what I find to be the most exciting. And then what I do is I just kind of share my journey that I've taken with you guys on LinkedIn and then throughout the podcast. And on LinkedIn, I would say it's a bit more engineering related than it is here on this podcast. I like to try to keep this a bit more broad. But Javi was saying that he kind of likes to do the same thing of he wants to, and Javi, correct me if I'm wrong, you want to also try to find like manufacturing things you're passionate about and show them in a similar way to what I'm doing. But you said, I don't want to step on your toes because that's what you're doing. But Javi, this is where question 2 comes in, is what makes you stand out from your peers? Javi, we could be talking about the same exact thing, but given that you and I are completely different people, our approaches to talking about it could look completely different. And just because I'm talking about things that I like in manufacturing in a certain way, if you did the same exact thing, your version of it would look completely different. So to answer your question, like, it's cool. Like, if you want to do exactly what I'm doing, follow in my footsteps, which I'm sure you probably have even better ideas than me, go for it. Like, you can use people that you think are doing a good job as a model and as a guide. Like, that's how humans have learned for centuries. So there's nothing wrong with that. So Javi, when you're doing this and you're entering this space with not too many other people, but a handful of other people who are passionately posting about manufacturing, what makes you different? What is your like background or experience or just like your personality trait that you think makes you stand out from your peers?
I love that segment right there and that question in terms of what is the difference, uniqueness that I bring to this sort of content. And so I would say what people would recognize the most about me is the positivity and the enthusiasm that just goes behind every single post or comment or in real life meetup, basically. And so, you know, everyone comes from a different background. With me, it's aerospace and electronics manufacturing. But it's that whenever I see something, I'm just like, I'm amazed. It's just the coolest thing. That's something that I try to portray in my current post on LinkedIn, for example, like the ornament one for Christmas, in terms of how cool it is that there's this thing that we put on a tree, and like, how is it even started? This is like the origin story, you know? Like, you got Superman and Batman, now you have a glass ornament origin tree, origin story, you know?
Absolutely.
So I think the different perspective that I bring on it is the personality that I'm trying to carry into this content. And so that's what I'd kind of say for that.
Yeah, I'd also say something I've noticed with Javi's post, because I obviously looked at his post before having him on here, would be Javi takes a approach that is a bit historically based. So he, like he said with the ornament thing, he likes to actually have a background knowledge on the thing he's talking about. And he's also very good at explaining processes. So there's a few things where he laid out like, hey, do you know how XYZ works? And then he laid it out step by step. Now, to me, that's special because I am very ADD. I'm very in the moment, and I post what I'm feeling, and I don't want to spend forever typing unless it's my feelings. Javi, on the other hand, does a good job at like verifying background processes and is actually putting out slightly more thought out content from what I can tell than what I do. I'm more of a passion based, and I hope for the best. Whereas Javi, I would say something that makes your post special is that you are laying it out a bit more methodically, and I know many engineers appreciate that because we are more analytically minded. So kudos on that.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, next question in building your brand. Now, I think I asked this one in choosing a podcast topic, so it's kind of a similar vibe, but this one's more interactive. It would be, who are you trying to talk to? Who is your audience? When you're posting one of your posts, who do you think would benefit from seeing it? Like, who wants to see this content you're putting out?
Yeah, so that's something I've thought of heavily in terms of who am I trying to target for my audience. And so I'm going to take it back a few steps, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You do you.
And so I've been fortunate enough with, like, throughout my my jobs to be involved in manufacturing associations in Connecticut and to be able to network with other like-minded people. So at first I was thinking my target audience is going to be getting Gen Z interested into manufacturing, which is, I think, a super worthwhile and awesome endeavor.
Absolutely.
In terms of getting the next generation interested in something that's cool. But then I figured, why don't we just back it up a little bit? You know, why not just go for interest in manufacturing in general? not just Gen Z, but you have millennials, you have Gen X, you know, just not necessarily to cast the widest net in the world, but to cast a net in the first place, you know?
So you want to be generally interesting enough to where you do such a good job showing that manufacturing is fun that my little sister would care and your grandma would care. Like, it is something to where it's like, it's eye-catching, someone sees it. The question is how, you know? I mean, that's something that we learn over time. But to know that you want a broad audience is cool, because if you wanted to do something very, very niche, like, that's okay. But the fact that you know that you want to reach a lot of people, that's so good to know ahead of time when making content. Or else sometimes we end up going down a rabbit hole that we can't get out of. So the next question I would ask you, I had one pop up and then I totally forgot. It was like going to be a tangent, and then my ADD got the best of me. Okay, so this was next on my list, which would be, what are your values? So I guess, like, what's important to you to include in a post? Or not just a post, but like when someone's thinking of Javi, like, what is he? Like, what is something that you feel you're passionate about, like, within your guidelines of posting? Like, are you somebody who maybe you're going to take this LinkedIn fame and you're making an OnlyFans, or maybe I'm just kidding.
Don't reveal the secrets.
Yeah. Maybe you're taking this and you want to help people learn. Maybe you're taking this, like what are your values that make you good at doing this, or potentially good? We don't want to get too ahead of ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. So in terms of values, the way I think about my posting and my content is that, I mean, it rings true to who I am as a person. I want to be helpful. I want to have some form of enthusiasm or optimism in there, just because, like, that rings true to me, you know? So I've been, people have labeled it sometimes motivational, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But I also, you know, it's not, you can't just info dump. You know, and I've had that issue before of you put down information that you're like, oh, this is great, and no one's interested. So you have to keep it engaging. So I'm thinking if I can be helpful, informational, and engaging, that is the three things I want to target, so that someone reads a post, feels like they came out of it with something, and genuinely feels like, oh, this is cool. Like, I can tell this story at a dinner party or use it to fix something, you know?
Absolutely. So more like applicable type knowledge. And I don't think you guys understand, because, I mean, Javi and I are clearly so interesting. You may not pick up on this, but engineering can be quite boring. Manufacturing, when you just step on the floor, it could be overwhelming. It could be dirty. It could be, like, really smelly in some cases. It could be messy. Like, it's not glamorous. Like, manufacturing does cool things. Engineering does cool things. But when you're talking about a day-to-day basis of these jobs, people who are actually in it know it is not glamorous. So for someone to be able to take this content and make it fun, to make it informational, and not just informational, but digestible, that is something that is actually very hard to do. So if Javi, like I told him yesterday, is doing a good job at coming across as motivational and excited about something that at its core is genuinely really boring, that's a talent. And maybe I sound like kind of a bitch saying that, but, like, guys, come on, like, for the general population, engineering, if you pull out an engineering textbook, you're gonna fall asleep. Like, it's not exciting until you understand it. So in order to get people to understand it, we have to find a way to invite them into the space and not trick them, but entice them enough to want to get to know this knowledge to where they can eventually make these concepts fun. And Javi's trying to do that, am I right?
Absolutely. I think you hit it spot on.
Sometimes I say it a little bit too bluntly because I'm not good at... my watch is talking to me. But yeah, so we know his values now. Next, Javi, what is your ultimate career goal in relation to this? In relation to, like, posting, influencing, like, how do you think that this goes hand in hand with your day job and, like, your aspirations beyond that?
Yeah, like a 5 or like a 10-year plan sort of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have probably put some more thought into that beforehand.
It can be conceptual. It could just be feelings, like what you aspire when you think off the top of your head. Like, what do I want this to be? Why am I doing it? Why am I spending time on it? Like, what is that?
Right. Yeah, and it's it's just really that innate interest in being able to find a career and loving it at first sight. And so whether it was aerospace or electronics manufacturing, to be able to find something cool in both of them of how something is made. So I'm like, I think we spoke about this yesterday, how like the jobs we work at right now are awesome, you know? And
not
it's just,
to flex, but yeah.
yeah, not to flex, but totally. No, it's an amazing environment. So like working at Bead, so the company culture, the leadership, just even outside of the manufacturing processes, just the operations is really fun to watch and take a part of. In terms of looking out ahead, I definitely want to be a positive influence on others, for sure. Still keep being engaging, still keep teaching, and who knows, maybe down the line, sooner rather than later, start focusing on that sort of Gen Z and next generation, and try to gauge more of that interest from them.
Yeah. I'm curious to know if I have any Gen Z listeners. I have noticed that in this field, I'm very popular amongst the 30 years old plus crowd, so more millennials and up, and that people my age find me to be quite weird. So sometimes I wonder, Javi, how old are you?
I'm 25.
Okay, so you're a year older than me. I'm 24. So I guess you're Gen Z, right? Barely?
Yeah,
I know I am, barely.
I've heard the cutoff is 95. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. So we're barely in their Gen Zs, and it's quite interesting because my little sister is a Gen Z, and I'm like, oh my Lord, all she wants to do is dye her hair a different color every day, and all their weird fashion trends they learn on TikTok, and I'm like, how do I get one of these kids to give a damn about engineering? I don't know. So Javi, if you find a way to make these kids give a damn, you let us know. And you teach a course on that. That could be something that you aspire to do, because those kids one day are the future. I mean, we're the future for generations before us, and they're going to be ours. I mean, they're only a few years behind, and they are partially us. But if we can find a way to communicate with that crowd, that would be awesome. So we'll see what you do with that. We're excited.
We'll do my best.
Okay, next question. Now, guys, I hope you're understanding the correlation between these questions and how they apply to building your brand, because although this feels very brainstorming-like and not super cut and dry, that's just because building a brand is also kind of like building your aura. Like when you're putting yourself out there and you make a post, we want to know kind of conceptually what you're about. Maybe you don't understand it in each and every post. Maybe it takes someone following you for a while, but you need to understand what you're doing well. And so that's why we ask a lot of these open-ended questions. Now, when it comes to specific strategy down to like requesting people on LinkedIn and actually making connections, I talked about that in the last podcast, but that again could go another level deeper. So if you want to learn more about that, let me know. But for now, we're doing more the conceptual idea of building our brand. So next question is, what is your favorite way to communicate, Javi? Do you like LinkedIn? Do you like posting pictures, words, videos, YouTube? Okay, favorite platform and then favorite type of media post. What's your favorite way to communicate?
That's another great question, because I immediately wanted to say face-to-face conversation.
Okay, that's fine too. That's valid. I mean, it could parlay into that. But
no,
if you're
sure.
wanting to be a social media influencer, I would hope you like to communicate on social media.
Oh, absolutely. It's a fun platform for sure.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to communicate online to anyone that's available, you know? And so LinkedIn is definitely my preferred and strongest social media. I came into it really loving the fact that it was a professional networking environment, and that there are other people that, you know, are accredited in their space, and you could really reach out and connect with anybody. So that's definitely my strongest platform.
Yeah, I love LinkedIn as well. I always tell people that, like, I went out to dinner with my coworkers, I guess it was a few months ago, and I'm definitely like the youngest person by probably like a 10 to 15 year age gap, and they're like, oh, like, what's your favorite social media? And I said LinkedIn, and they're like, Excuse me, what is wrong with you? You're in your 20s. Why is it LinkedIn? And I said, I don't know. I'm just good at LinkedIn. I am so bad at Instagram. There's so many trends to keep up with on TikTok. I can't even keep up. And all of those are like about how pretty you are and how big your butt is. And I'm like, at least in engineering, it's about how big my brain is. So I'm like, that is something I like to talk about. And I actually have something to say there. Like, I can only post so many selfies on Instagram before it's weird. But I feel like I could post a selfie on LinkedIn every day with a piece of soldering equipment and it feels normal. Like, sometimes we just feel more at home on a certain platform. And I would say, I was telling Javi yesterday, kind of find your main base of where you want to build that platform. And sure, it's good to have, I guess, lateral platforms to go between of like LinkedIn, YouTube, etc., because you want to be able to expand, but also just find one that you're good at and start your platform there. Like, I chose LinkedIn, Javi's choosing LinkedIn. You can always change your mind, but just find somewhere to be consistent and be authentic and get in a groove, and that'll be very helpful. But I guess the next thing would be, what's your second favorite? I hear you want to get into the YouTubes.
Absolutely. YouTube has always been a favorite of mine ever since, what did it come out in, 2006, 2007? Being able to watch...
I just thought it was always there.
No, that's valid. And to first, obviously, just for like the funny videos that you could find on there, but then the fact that people are producing like amazing content. Like, you could find TV or movie quality content or better on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, for me, it's the original like video kingpin compared to, you know, other platforms like TikTok and Instagram Reels and stuff like that. So I've always been amazed by that, and that's why I like it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, yesterday was saying I love YouTube and I love LinkedIn, but sometimes like one has benefits that the other doesn't. For instance, LinkedIn is great for daily interactions, but it really has a way of losing your post in your feed. And so if you want someone to like really be able to refer to your work, if getting into videos is something you're interested in, then it's good to have something like YouTube to direct them to, where it's a bit easier to funnel through all of your different content. So I like to keep mine in playlist. So I have things from like this podcast specifically where it has its own playlist. I have my soldering projects, I have engineering concepts, I have some tool tips. Basically just another place where your brand extends, but it's almost like a better placeholder for organization purposes. LinkedIn's really good day to day, but big picture, like I said, you can get lost in the sauce. Okay. So I'm sure you probably already answered this in one way, shape, or form, but what is your why? When someone says, why are you posting? Why do you want to take time to do this? Maybe your mom asks you, hey, maybe it's me physically asking you right now, but why are you doing this? Why do you want to do this? Being, I guess, an influencer or like somebody who grows a following in social media on a manufacturing topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would think my why is directed at the people that I'm engaging with through this outreach to essentially empower them to understand, learn, or pick up a skill that they might not necessarily be thinking about in terms of making things. So I think my why is showing people that and teaching people that.
Very cool. Very cool. I would say my why is because I love when people from across the world DM me asking me to marry them and tell me I'm pretty. No, I'm just kidding. But that does happen way more than you would think. So shout out to all my marriage proposers. I love you all. Thank you. Keep watching. But no, I'd say my why is because when I first started, my why was literally I was a sales engineer and I wanted to get more customers and I wanted to get more brand awareness for the company I was selling for, because I would go into so many places cold calling and they had no idea who the company was they worked for. Meanwhile, you go to the company and they think everybody knows who they are and they're the best company in the world, but like they had like very bad brand awareness. So my idea was I would build their brand awareness through my page, and that's why I posted pretty often. And I thought that posting demo videos would parlay into more meetings, aka more sales, et cetera, et cetera. So that was my initial why. Then after a while, I just got so much support from people who weren't even like trying to buy from me and were just like, hey, I love watching your videos. Like your passion is very, it's very different than what we're used to seeing, and we'd love to see more videos. Long story short, I had to stop making videos for a while and then didn't get to restart until about a month or so ago. And when I was restarting, I was trying to figure out my why. Like, why am I doing this? I'm not a sales engineer anymore. Like, I don't sell things. Like, I do research. I'm a marketing engineer. I'm way behind the scenes. Like, why bother posting about this stuff? And then I realized I love it. I find it interesting, and nobody else in my life does except for my boss. So I want to find a community that I can share this stuff with. And another aspect of it is normalizing women in engineering. I wish growing up that I could have seen a girl or woman doing what I'm trying to do. And I think that that would have been so inspirational, and just not even inspirational, but just normalizing that this is a thing that women can do. This is a thing young people can do. This is a thing that people who, like me, didn't have engineers as parents or never met an engineer till I became one, basically. Like, I just want to be there trying to make engineering more fun. And it took me a while to find my why again. I knew I liked making videos, but the why is so hard. So when you're trying to make or figure out your why, it's okay if you don't get it right away. Sometimes your why will develop over time, but your why is what keeps you going. So sometimes I'm feeling a bit lazy and I think, I know I haven't posted a video in a few days, but like, do I have to? Does anyone even care if I post a video? Like, does anyone even care if I say something on LinkedIn? Like, will they care if I don't post a podcast this week? And maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't want to give myself too much credit. But then I think about my why and how I would be failing if I didn't follow through with the pattern that I've been trying to keep up with. So that's my over-explained why.
But that's amazing to know. So thank you for going into it in terms of all the what you're trying to help normalize and how you're, that intrinsic motivation versus the extrinsic motivation. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I also just have a lot of things going on in my head all the time, and I like to just dump them into the internet and be like, hey guys, look at this stuff I'm doing. So sometimes people like it. But yeah, so I guess that's sort of the questions I had planned. But Javi, I guess, is there any other things that you're trying to work through when you're building your brand? Like, what are some like dilemmas you've been having? What are some things you're unsure of? Like, I mean, you could just talk to me like it's just you and I that we're bouncing around ideas. Like, is there any approaches you thought of trying that you want to put out there and I could give you some advice on, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I think something that was brought up before, I think it was more of an issue earlier on, but I think this will help people who are trying to build their brand, is the whole overthinking thing.
Yes.
It's definitely not a fun thought to have, like, oh, is this too much or is this too little, or should I even consider posting this? Because I think the phrase is that good is the enemy of perfect. And if you have something that you like, just go for it. Just don't try to over fine tune it, because then you're never going to end up posting it, and then you're never going to end up building that consistency, which is something that I had to learn, the hard way. You got to get it out there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So one of Javi and I's first conversations was talking about that. And I remember telling him, like, just don't try to make it perfect. Just do it. And then you'll learn as you go. And eventually this stuff will be so far back in your feed, no one will remember if you were bad at it. So something that'd be interesting, because I think it says it in my host bio, which probably no one's read, but I'm like a former overthinker transformed into fearless failure. So I guess a failure, you could say, in the theme of Failing for You podcast would be getting stuck in the phase of overthinking and underdoing. Javi, I'm interested in, be as vulnerable as you want, when you were stuck in that overthinking phase, what were the intrusive thoughts you were having that you think other people might relate to or might not? Like, what stopped you from posting before you got a kick in the butt from me saying, just freaking do it?
Yeah, and I'll be as honest about this answer, because whatever thoughts I'm having is probably the same exact thoughts as somebody else is having.
Most likely.
And it's really just like, what are other people going to think about me? Do people even care? I think that's the one that you were saying before. Like, what is the external perspective going to be, or the public opinion going to be on this post? And then when you're just like, I'm just expressing myself, just like, go for it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were worried, what would people think? When you think about that, like, what types of judgments are you worried about? Like, what specifically? Like, that your knowledge isn't correct, or that it's not interesting? Like, what do you fear that they will think that would be something that would stop you from posting, or maybe get you stuck in that overthinking phase?
So I think for me, the biggest question is, like, if I'm gonna do something playful for a post, I one of my first LinkedIn posts was talking about the end of 2022, reflecting on it, and then thinking about goals for 2023. And I had taken a selfie a while ago because I was like, oh, LinkedIn selfies, you know, you got to have a selfie for your post. And in this post, I was looking real nice with a dress down shirt and a blazer, but I didn't realize there was toilet paper right down there. And I put it into the post, you know, after talking to some friends, and I'm like, oh, is this going to be too unprofessional? Like,
oh no, Javi uses toilet paper.
Crazy, right? Shocking story. And I went for it. I'm like, all right, this is going to be the scariest thing I do. This is my professional network, but it's professional. Like, you can, you know, help people, add value, and still, like, have fun, and still, like, you know, remain the way you are, and go for it.
Absolutely. So something that I notice a lot of people get nervous about doing is, like, posting things, like, say if you want to be an influencer on, like, Instagram or, like, YouTube, that somebody from your high school or college is going to come across your YouTube channel and be like, oh my God, that's so cringe. And I feel like that thought stops a lot of people from going after it, because they don't want people to see them before they're successful. So is that something that you've ever worried about, is being judged prematurely before you kind of, like, shown that you can do it, or just by people from your past that, or even, like, your family, that they're going to watch your video and be like, oh goodness, like, what is Javi doing? Like, is that something that ever crosses your mind?
It used to. But I think after that toilet paper post, I was like, the sky is my limit, you know?
Oh my goodness.
But it's really, so beyond the fact that, like, I was able to do it, and, like, I didn't die, and, like, the world was all right, and, you know, everything was fine. It was the fact that people came back to me and said, like, I like what you're posting. And so obviously you shouldn't do things because other people like it, but if it's positive feedback like that in the right direction, and so, you know, like, you're doing something that you want to do correctly, it feels great, and it keeps you going.
Yeah, it's nice to get those affirmations. One thing I really like is this phrase, and it says, like, do it scared, but there's also another one. I saw a person that said, do it fat. So a lot of girls or guys or whatever, like, they don't want to go on their beach vacation until they've lost the 80 pounds. They don't want to do this until they look a certain way. They don't want to get a boyfriend until they think they're skinny enough to deserve one. Or same thing goes if, like, being scared. Like, you don't want to do something until you feel fully ready. And so I think that a lot in my head. And even though this being, like, whatever size I am doesn't relate to this, some people may think, oh, we're putting our faces out there. We're putting our looks out there as well. And so my advice is, do it fat. Do it scared. Do it unready. Do it whatever. Prepare a reasonable amount. Don't be ridiculous, because there's a difference between just putting yourself out there when it's time and just being, like, you know, completely reckless and thoughtless. All right. So, like, I'm not saying just say from your heart all the time. Like, think a little about what you're doing, but don't let these things that you're afraid you'll receive external judgment on stop you from doing something you want to do. Do it fat, do it scared, do it whatever stage you're in. Just do it, okay? Hashtag Nike. No, I'm just kidding. Nike knows what's up. I don't think I own anything Nike, but still. But yeah, so I guess one last question. I feel like you kind of answered it there, but I would say, do you feel like you have had a failure through this that you have a lesson you want to share on? I mean, it could almost have been the toilet paper thing count as that, but do you have any other failures you've gone through so far that you've eventually gotten over that you feel like you could give any useful advice to the listeners?
So I think one practical one, it's not like, you know, like super serious or anything. It's just like figuring out my content ahead of time, just like knowing what I want to talk about. I'm definitely, like you said, methodical. So I guess I could answer that. So a failure that that I've been thinking about early on that I've tried to correct as much as I can is just planning ahead with the content that I want to post. I definitely like to be methodical in terms of what I'm showing. I do, as the start of this journey, a lot of that personal branding is just who I am as a person. So I think a lot of my, you got your introduction post, and then I love running. I've been rock climbing and stuff like that, and just, making that ahead of time, maybe 2 or 3 days versus the night before, and you're like, why am I doing this so late? But just what I want to talk about.
Yeah, I'm always like on the couch at 6 a.m. drinking my coffee. That's why it's been like 6:30 a.m. drinking my coffee, being like, oh my god, do I have any like selfies I took recently with something they can use, because I don't think I'm gonna look pretty today. Like, sometimes it's hard. I feel like I post so often that it is always last minute. Like, I try to release my podcast on Thursday, and here we are, it's Wednesday and we're recording. Like, sometimes it happens, but yeah, that's good advice, is to think ahead of time, schedule it out a little, be more methodical, if you want to be sane. Or you could be absolutely insane like me and be a mess and just throw it all out there. It's absolutely up to you guys, but that is good advice, Javi. I think we just about covered everything, so I guess the last question would be is, where can they find you? I'll link your pages in the show notes, but is there going to be a YouTube channel soon? Is it already there? Like, what socials should they be following you on? And we'll link them below, but tell us.
So yeah, you guys can find me on LinkedIn at Javi Melecio. And so that's, again, my main platform where I talk about manufacturing, my own, personal life, and build the brand. I also have a link tree on there. Like Jordan said, my social platforms will be in the show notes. I do want to take this moment to give a shout out to 2 groups that I'm a part of, Furlough and Beast Club, in terms of helping me understand digital marketing and then entrepreneurship, and really being part of the reason why I'm a guest on this podcast right now, which is awesome. So I want to thank those communities, and thank you guys. Thanks for having me on the show, Jordan.
Yeah, of course. Guys, this has been fun. Javi, we appreciate you so much for taking your time out of your busy day and giving us all your input and just being vulnerable with us and going through the process of being a beginner, because you know what? It's not always pretty. We fail a little bit here and there, but that's why I'm here, and that's why Javi was here today. So thank you guys so much for listening. I'm your host, Jordan Yates, and I'll be failing for you. See you next time.